A billionaire poured a $400 bottle of wine on a waitress in front of 300 people. She got fired on the spot, but she didn't cry nor leave. She looked him in the eye and said something so devastating that grown men at his table couldn't look up from their plates. And then a man stood up from a table in the corner. A man in a plain shirt. He had no watch or jewelry. He's the kind of man you'd walk past without noticing. And what happened next cost that arrogant billionaire everything. When I say everything, I mean his investors, his empire, his $60 million tower. Gone. All of it. But before I tell you how it all fell apart, let me take you back to a quiet Wednesday evening 6 weeks earlier, because that's where this story really begins. Hello friends, welcome. Before we continue, like this video and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Miami? London? Michigan? Or even Lagos? Wherever you are, let us know. Now let's get it. Leah Tadessa was 25 years old and she had been on her feet for 14 hours. Double shift again. Third one this week. Her ankles ached. Her lower back burned in a way she had stopped noticing because noticing didn't help. But she smiled. She always smiled. Not because she was happy, because tips paid for her mother's medication. $1,200 a month after insurance for the dialysis that kept Almaz Tadessa alive. Rent, $1,450 for a one-bedroom in Little Haiti close to the clinic. Medication, $380. Food, utilities, transport, whatever was left. There was never anything left. The Pearl was Miami's most exclusive restaurant. Waterfront views of Biscayne Bay. Crystal chandeliers imported from Vienna. Entrees that cost more than Leah made in a full shift. The kind of place where men in $5,000 suits snapped their fingers for refills and never looked their server in the eye. Leah had worked there for 2 years. She moved through the dining room like water. Smooth, quiet, invisible when she needed to be, present when it mattered. The manager, a thin man named Gerald, told her that she was the best server he'd ever had. Then he scheduled her for 6 doubles in a row and forgot to process her overtime. That was the thing about being good at a job that didn't respect you. They rewarded your excellence with more work and the same pay. Her father, Tafari Tadessa, had come to America from Addis Ababa with $60 and an engineering degree that nobody in Miami recognized. 47 firms. 47 rejections. So Tafari drove a taxi for 18 years in Miami heat that melted the dashboard of his cab. He never complained. Not once. He poured everything into his daughter. Education, Leah, he would say every morning, adjusting his taxi mirror. They can take everything from you. Your money, your job, your home. But they can never take what's in your head. Learn everything. Be ready. He died of a heart attack in the driver's seat of his cab when Leah was 19. They found him at a red light on Biscayne Boulevard. The meter was still running. And in the trunk, wrapped in brown paper, was a cookbook, French pastry techniques, with a note in his careful handwriting. For my chef. Love, Baba. She couldn't open it for 6 months. When she finally did, she started cooking. 3 notebooks full. Hundreds of recipes. Ethiopian-inspired dishes reimagined with French technique. Berber-spiced lamb chops with roasted beet puree. Doro what ravioli with turmeric cream sauce. Every dish was written in the same careful handwriting her father used for his taxi logs. Her dream, the one she kept locked in her chest like a photograph she was afraid to look at, was a restaurant of her own. She never told anyone. Dreams felt dangerous when you were broke. Henrik Gabri arrived at 8:47 p.m. He didn't walk in. He arrived. There is a difference. Walking in is what normal people do. Arriving is a performance. The front door opened and two men in suits entered first, scanned the room, then stepped aside. Behind them, Henrik strolled in as the building owed him rent. 32, tall, custom Italian suit that probably cost more than Leah's car. Gold Rolex, diamond cufflinks. Cologne was so strong that it arrived 3 seconds before he did. Behind him, 6 associates, people whose job was to laugh at his jokes because his money was always listening, and 2 women in designer dresses, the kind of women who existed to be seen next to men like Henrik. The VIP table, Henrik said to the hostess without making eye contact. I called ahead. He had called ahead. 40 minutes ago. The VIP table was already occupied by an elderly couple celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary. Gerald apologized to them and moved them to a smaller table near the bathroom. 40 years of marriage, and they were moved by a man who called 40 minutes ago. But that was the power of Henrik Gabri, founder of Gabri Holdings, a $400 million real estate empire. Known for 3 things: his money, his temper, and his absolute conviction that both made him God's gift to every room he entered. Leah was assigned to his table. The next 90 minutes were a masterclass in cruelty. Not the loud kind, the slow, deliberate kind that knows exactly what it's doing. He sent the water back first. This is tap, he said, not looking up from his phone. It was aqua panna. Leah knew because she had opened the bottle herself. But she smiled, took the glass, poured from the same bottle and brought it back. Henrik sipped. Better. Same water. Same bottle. Same glass. But now it tasted right because he had made someone submit. That was the real thirst. Not for water. For power. He sent his steak back twice. Both times, nothing was wrong with it. The chef knew it. Gerald knew it. Leah knew it. But knowing didn't matter. The steak wasn't the point. The point was making someone redo their work because you could. He snapped his fingers at Leah 7 times over 90 minutes. Literally snapped. The way you call a dog. More bread. Different butter. A fork with a water spot. Each snap was a tiny humiliation. Each one said, "You exist to serve me, and I want you to know it." Then he leaned back in his chair and looked at her the way a man looks at something he's already decided doesn't matter. "Sweetheart," he said, and the word was a weapon. "Where are you from?" "Miami, sir." "No. Originally. Where are your people from?" Leah's jaw tightened. "My family is Ethiopian." "Ethiopian." He said it like he was tasting something bitter. "That explains it. The service in Addis is just like this. Slow, confused, always smiling but never actually competent." One of the women laughed so hard she snorted. Leah said nothing. She stood there with her tray and her smile, and she said nothing, because saying something meant losing the shift. And losing the shift meant Mama's medication didn't get paid on Friday. So she swallowed it. And then the wine happened. Henrik had ordered a bottle of Chateau Margaux for $100. As Leah poured for one of the women, Henrik's phone rang. He pushed his chair back suddenly without looking, and his arm hit her elbow. The wine splashed. A few drops, maybe 5, landed on his suit sleeve. Not his shirt. Not his chest. His sleeve. 5 drops. The restaurant went quiet. Not the kind of quiet that's peaceful. The kind that sits on top of something terrible about to happen. Henrik looked at his sleeve. Looked at the tiny red dots on his custom fabric. Looked at Leah. Something cold moved behind his eyes. He stood up, grabbed the wine bottle from her hand and poured it. Not on the table, not on the floor, on her. $400 of Chateau Margaux cascaded down Leah's white uniform shirt. Red spreading across white like a wound opening. It ran down her apron, dripped from the hem onto the marble floor. Now maybe you'll learn to pay attention when a real man is talking to you. He smoothed his sleeve. This is what happens when you let villagers work in real establishments. Villagers. He said it while looking at her skin, her features, her hair. He wasn't insulting her service. He was insulting her blood. Gerald materialized from nowhere, pale-faced. Sir, I am so deeply sorry. Fire her, Henrik said casually. Now, in front of me, or this restaurant never sees another dollar of my money. Gerald turned to Leah. She saw it in his eyes before he opened his mouth. The look of a man choosing money over a person. Leah, you're terminated. Effective immediately. I'm sorry. Something shifted in the room. A gasp from a nearby table. A woman whispering, "That's not right." But nobody moved. 300 people, and the silence was the loudest sound in the building. At table 7, the corner table by the bay window, the one hidden behind the pillar, the one nobody ever wanted. A quiet man in a plain navy Henley gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. He watched everything. Nobody noticed him. Nobody ever noticed table 7. 6 weeks earlier. A Wednesday. An unremarkable, forgettable Wednesday. A man walked into the Pearl alone. Tall, lean, dark skin with sharp cheekbones and calm, deep-set eyes that seemed to take in the entire room without rushing. He wore dark jeans, a plain navy Henley, clean white sneakers. No watch, no jewelry, nothing that announced anything. He looked like a man who had wandered into the wrong restaurant. Table for one? Leah asked. Please, something quiet if you have it. She sat him at table 7. Corner spot, bay window, slightly hidden from the main dining room. The table nobody wanted because it was far from the kitchen and the view was partially blocked by a pillar. This is perfect, he said, and he actually seemed to mean it. He ordered simply, grilled fish, roasted vegetables, sparkling water. No appetizer, no wine, no dessert. The kind of order that would earn Leah about a $12 tip if she was lucky. She didn't care. Something about him made her not care. When she brought his food, he set his fork down and looked at her. Not past her. Not through her. Her. Can I ask you something unusual? Depends on how unusual. What would you order if you were sitting here instead of serving? The question caught her off guard. Nobody ever asked the waitress what she would eat. In 2 years, not a single customer had ever looked at her and wondered if she had her own opinions about food. Honestly, she hesitated. Then something in his eyes, patience, genuine curiosity, warmth, made her answer. I'd skip the menu entirely. Seared lamb chops with a Berber spice crust, roasted beet puree, and a honey cardamom glaze. Served with handmade injera chips for texture. He stared at her. You just made that up right now? I've been making it up in my head for about 3 years. I have notebooks full of dishes like that. Notebooks. Plural. 3 so far. He shook his head slowly. That dish sounds better than anything on this menu. And this menu is very expensive. I'm Dawit, he said. Leah. He left a $50 tip on a $38 check. She stared at it for a full minute. He came back the next Wednesday. Same table. Same simple order. Same easy conversation. He asked about her notebooks, her recipes, her ideas. He listened like every word mattered. Not the fake listening she was used to, where people nod while looking at their phones. Dawit put his phone face down on the table and didn't touch it once. He came back the Wednesday after that. And the one after that. By the 4th Wednesday, Leah had started calling it Dawit's table in her head. By the 5th, she saved table 7 for him without being asked. By the 6th, she realized Wednesdays were the only day she looked forward to. He met Almaz on the 3rd week. Leah was nervous. Her apartment was small, the furniture secondhand, the air conditioning broken since August. Dawit walked in with a bag of fresh injera from the Ethiopian market and a small bouquet of yellow flowers. He spoke Amharic. He ate 3 servings. He insisted on washing the dishes. When Leah came out of the bathroom, he was at the sink with his sleeves rolled up, scrubbing a pot. You don't have to do that. I want to. After he left, Almaz opened one eye from the couch. He washed the dishes without being asked. Yes, Mama. This one has kind eyes. Don't scare him away. What Leah didn't know, what she had absolutely no way of knowing, was that Dawit Bele was the founder and CEO of Bele Ventures International, a global investment firm with $3.8 billion under management. He owned commercial real estate in 12 cities across 4 countries. His personal net worth sat north of $1.2 billion. His home in Coral Gables was a 15,000 square foot waterfront estate with a 14-car collection that included a Bentley, a restored Mustang, and a Rolls-Royce Cullinan that cost more than most people's houses. The old Honda Accord he drove to the Pearl every Wednesday was one of 14 cars. He had been featured in Forbes, Bloomberg, and the Wall Street Journal. Twice. He hid all of it. Deliberately, carefully, because of Celine. 3 years earlier, a woman named Celine had taught Dawit the most expensive lesson of his life. They dated for a year. He gave her everything, the penthouse access, the black card, the vacations. When his firm hit turbulence, $200 million in losses over 6 months, Celine's love collapsed with the portfolio. She left loudly, publicly, moved in with a hedge fund manager before the ink dried, posted champagne emojis on social media, tagged his business partners. The money came back. It always does when you're smart and patient. But Dawit didn't want it back the same way. He wanted someone who loved the man, not the money. Someone who would eat injera on a second-hand couch and not care that the air conditioning was broken. Someone who would agree to coffee with a man she thought was ordinary. Every Wednesday, Marcus, his private driver, dropped Dawit at a parking garage 6 blocks from the Pearl so he could switch to the Honda. You're going to have to tell her eventually, sir, Marcus said one evening, holding the Escalade door open. Dawit paused, 1 foot already out. When I'm sure it won't break what we're building. Then Leah mentioned she was covering the VIP section Saturday night. Dawit decided to come. Not on a Wednesday, on a Saturday. He wanted to watch her in her element. See her move through the room the way she did, like water, like someone who belonged everywhere and was appreciated nowhere. He arrived early, took table 7, ordered his usual, sparkling water, grilled fish, and then Henrik Gabri walked in. If you're still here, type, "I'm still watching" in the comments. Let's see who stays until the end. Back to Saturday night. Back to the wine dripping off the hem of a white uniform shirt. Back to 300 people holding their breath. Leah stood in the center of the pearl, wine-soaked and fired, and for one terrible, honest moment, she almost broke. She felt it rising in her chest. The tears, the rage, the humiliation, the 14-hour shifts and the broken air conditioning and the $6,800 in savings and her mother's dialysis and her dead father's cookbook and table 7 and everything. Everything pressing down on her at once. She almost broke. But then she heard her father's voice, clear as morning, calm as still water. "They can take everything from you, Leah, but they can never take what's in your head." She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and looked Henrik Gabri directly in the eyes. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She spoke calmly, clearly, like a woman reading a verdict. And by the time she finished, there wasn't a single person in that restaurant who would ever forget what they heard. "You want to know what I see when I look at you?" Her voice was quiet, but in that silence, quiet was louder than any shout. "I see a man who spends $400 on a bottle of wine to impress people who don't even like him." Henrik's smirk flickered. "I see a man who snaps his fingers at another human being because it's the only way he can feel tall." The smirk died. "I see a man who calls a woman a villager because the only village he's ever built is the one inside his own ego. And even that's falling apart." Dead silence. The kind of silence that has weight. She turned to his table. His associates. The 2 women who had stopped laughing. "Look at them, Henrik. Not one of them respects you. They fear your wallet. That's not the same thing. And deep down, deep down where the suits and the watches and the diamond cufflinks can't reach, you know that. You've always known that." One of the associates looked away. "My father drove a taxi in this city for 18 years. Her voice cracked, just barely, like a hairline fracture in glass. Then it steadied. "He never raised his voice at another human being. He never made anyone feel small. And when he died, 200 people came to his funeral. Not because he was rich. Not because he was powerful. Because he was good." She paused. Let the silence hold. "When you die, who's coming to yours?" The room was airless. 300 people frozen mid-moment. Forks suspended. Glasses untouched. An older woman 3 tables away, gray hair, pearl necklace, said it clearly, firmly. "She's right. She's absolutely right." Leah untied her apron. Slowly, deliberately, folded it neatly the way she folded everything, with care and precision. She placed it on the nearest table. "I know I'm fired, Gerald," she said calmly. "I've known since you opened your mouth." She turned toward the door. Head high, shoulders back, wine-stained shirt and all. Every eye in the restaurant followed her like she was the only light in the room. And then a chair scraped. Not at Henrik's table. Not at any of the front tables. Table 7. The corner table by the bay window. The one hidden behind the pillar. The one nobody ever wanted. Dawit Bele stood up. Excuse me. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the kind of voice that made rooms reorganize themselves around it. Calm, measured, final. He walked toward the VIP table. Slowly, hands in his pockets. Plain navy Henley, dark jeans, clean white sneakers. He looked like nobody. Who are you? Hennick snapped, his voice trying to recover its edge. The dishwasher on his night off? Dowett smiled, that quiet, patient smile that never showed his cards. He took out his phone, made a single call. 3 seconds. 1 sentence. Marcus, bring the car around and call the team. He hung up. Hennick's voice shifted. Higher. Thinner. What team? What car? You'll see in about 90 seconds. 60 seconds passed. Felt like 60 years. Then headlights swept across the windows like searchlights. A black Rolls-Royce Cullinan pulled up to the Pearl's entrance. Blacked out. Custom. Behind it, 2 black Escalade ESVs. Armored. Tinted. The doors opened. 4 men stepped out. Black suits, earpieces built like professional athletes. They moved with precision, taking positions, creating a perimeter. Then the Rolls-Royce driver, black suit, white gloves, stepped out and walked to the rear passenger door. Opened it. Nobody got in. The car was waiting. Engine running. Door open. A throne on wheels. Hennick stared through the window. His brain was doing math. Bad math. The kind of math that ends with the answer you don't want. He pulled out his phone, fingers shaking. Typed frantically. Forbes. Bloomberg. And there it was, a profile from 18 months ago. The photo showed a man in a navy Henley and dark jeans standing on the deck of a yacht. The headline, Dowett Belay, the $1.2 billion man who dresses like your neighbor. Hennick's phone slipped from his fingers. It hit the Italian marble floor with a crack that echoed through the silent restaurant like a verdict. You're Dowett Belay? Belay Ventures International. $3.8 billion under management as of this quarter. Dowett said it the way you state a fact about weather. But who's counting? Hennick's voice cracked open like something dropped from a height. I didn't know she was. She's not mine. Dowett's voice hardened. Not louder. Harder. Like steel cooling. She doesn't belong to me. She doesn't belong to anyone. She belongs to herself. That's the part you don't understand, Hennick. You don't get to treat people like they're disposable just because you think they belong to nobody important. She belongs to herself. And that makes her more powerful than you will ever be. There is a kind of truth that doesn't need volume. It enters a room the way cold air does. You feel it before you understand where it's coming from. Dowett turned to Gerald. The manager looked like a man watching his career dissolve in real time. You fired the best employee in this building because a customer assaulted her with a bottle of wine. Is that accurate? Gerald stammered. Sir, it's not that simple. The situation. Yes or no, Gerald? Yes. Dowett nodded. This restaurant. Who owns the building? Gerald blinked. It's leased through a property group. Meridian Commercial Partners. Meridian Commercial Partners. That's a subsidiary of Belay Ventures International. Dowett paused. Let it land. I own this building, Gerald. Gerald went white, then gray, then a color that hasn't been named yet. As the owner of this building, I have a few instructions. Dawit's voice was calm, conversational, terrifying. First, Leah Tadessa is not fired. She is reinstated immediately. This restaurant will fund a new culinary development program. Leah will lead it. Her recipes, her vision, her name on the menu. Starting Monday. Gerald nodded so fast his head blurred. Second, Dawit turned to Henrik. You are no longer welcome in any property owned or managed by Belle Ventures International. Any restaurant, any hotel, any commercial space, any parking garage. Effective immediately. You can't do that, Henrik whispered. That's dozens of properties. Hundreds, actually, across 12 cities. Third, Dawit's voice dropped just slightly, the way a temperature drops before a storm. I know 3 of your primary investors personally. Jim Stafford, Miguel Vargas, David Chin. They sit on my advisory board. We golf together. Our children attend the same school. He paused. One phone call, Henrik. That's all it takes. One phone call and your next development project loses its entire funding structure. Your Brickell Tower, the $60 million one. The blood left Henrik's face so completely he looked like a man made of paper. You wouldn't pour wine on another human being and find out. Henrik opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. His associates stared at the table like it contained the secrets of the universe. The 2 women were already quietly gathering their purses, calculating their exit strategy with the same precision they had calculated their entry. And at the table, something else happened. Something quieter than the confrontation, but just as real. The youngest associate, the one who had been staring at his plate all night, who had never laughed at Henrik's jokes, who had flinched every time fingers snapped, closed his eyes and exhaled. A long, slow breath. The kind a man takes when a performance he never wanted to give is finally, mercifully over. Dawit turned his back on Henrik Gabri completely, like swiping away a notification, like the man had already been forgotten. He walked toward Leah. She was standing by the door, wine-stained, trembling, not from cold, not from fear, from being seen. Truly, fully, completely seen for the first time since her father died. Dawit, she whispered. Who are you? I'm the man from Table 7 who thinks your Berbera lamb chops would change the world. He pulled off his Henley, plain white t-shirt underneath, and draped it gently over her shoulders, over the wine-stained uniform, over the white shirt that had carried every humiliation of the night. His Henley settled on her like a second skin, like armor, like someone saying without words, I see you. I've always seen you. She laughed, choked on it, laughed again. And then the tears came, 3 years of doubles, 3 years of swallowed insults, 3 years of smiling when she wanted to scream. Her father's death, her mother's illness, the $6,800, the recipes at midnight, the dream she was too afraid to say out loud. All of it, right there in the doorway of the Pearl, in front of 300 people and 4 bodyguards and a Rolls-Royce Cullinan with its door still open. Dawit wrapped his arms around her and held her like she was the most valuable thing in any room he had ever stood in. Because she was. I've got you, he whispered. I've always had you. Since Table 7. Dawit made the phone calls that Monday. Jim Stafford pulled his investment from Gabri Holdings by noon. Miguel Vargas followed by 3 p.m. David Chun sent a one-line email. We're done. Within a week, Hennick's $60 million Brickell Tower collapsed. No funding. No partners. Within 3 months, his empire was hemorrhaging from every wound. Last anyone heard, he was working from a rented office in Tampa. Alone. Replaying a waitress's words at 3 in the morning. Exactly like Dawit said he would. For months after that night, Dawit took Leah to a building in Wynwood. 4,000 square feet. Exposed brick walls. Warm wood floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the space with natural light. And 12 beautiful, gleaming, commercial-grade burners. Your restaurant, he said. Your recipes. Your name above the door. On the wall behind the pass, the spot where every plate would go out, hung a small frame. Inside it, a receipt. Faded. Wrinkled. And at the bottom, in his handwriting, Leah, Table 7. Remember this. Tadessa Kitchen opened on a Tuesday. Leah hired 12 people, all from backgrounds like hers. The 3 notebooks came to life. Every dish a story. Every plate a piece of her. Miami New Times gave it 5 stars. The Food Network called. Then Netflix. Almaz sat at a corner table on opening night. New dress. Healthy and strong. She found the framed receipt on the wall. Read it. Turned to Leah. Your father would be so proud of you, she said quietly. He drove that taxi so you could stand here. You know that, right? I know, Mama. He's been here the whole time. On the shelf beside the spice rack, right where it belonged, sat a cookbook. French pastry techniques, dog-eared and tear-stained. For my chef. Love, Baba. 6 months later, Dawit proposed. Not at the estate. Not on a yacht. Table 7. The entire Pearl reserved, 300 seats empty. 1 table set. Navy Henley. Sparkling water already poured. The ring engraved on the inside with 2 words. Table 7. She said yes before he finished the question. She'd been saying yes since the first Wednesday. He was just slow. Here is where the story rests. Not at the wine. Not at the reveal. Not at the ring. It rests at a pass in a kitchen in Wynwood, where a woman in a clean white chef's coat stands with her hands steady and her eyes clear, watching the first ticket come in. 12 burners lit behind her. Her father's cookbook on the shelf. A framed receipt on the wall. And a uniform shirt she will never have to wear again. A man poured wine on a waitress because he thought she was no one. She didn't break. She didn't beg. She stood in a soaked uniform in front of 300 people and spoke the truth so devastatingly that every person in that room will carry it for the rest of their lives. And the quiet man at table 7, the man she thought was ordinary, turned out to be the most extraordinary person in the room. But he didn't save her. She saved herself. He just made sure the world could see it. Your value is never set by the people who look down on you. It is set by how you stand when someone tries to bring you to your knees. And sometimes, the person who sees your worth before anyone else does is sitting quietly at a corner table. Waiting, watching, believing. Never let anyone pour wine on your spirit. Because spirit doesn't stain. It shines. If the story touched your heart, subscribe and tap that notification bell. In this channel, every story carries a lesson and fate never looks away. See you on the next one.